Now, if you've watched television in Nigeria or almost anywhere else in Africa, you would almost certainly have come into contact with programs produced by the South African media giant MultiChoice. And just in case you didn't know, MultiChoice owns the following outlets: GoTV, DSTV, SuperSport, Mnet, and Showmax, to mention a few. And these are the key figures behind the company. MultiChoice has at least 20 million subscribers across 50 countries. A big chunk of those viewers are in the company's home country, which is South Africa, but one of MultiChoice's biggest markets is Nigeria. So a big blow then to the company when just over a week ago, the authorities in Nigeria instructed banks to freeze MultiChoice's accounts, claiming the country had not only failed to pay more than $4 billion in taxes, but had blocked auditors from accessing their records. MultiChoice has denied the charges, insisting that it has complied with Nigerian tax laws. Well, for more on this, I'm joined now in the studio by the Nigerian economist and CEO of Global Analytics Consulting Limited, Tope Fasua, who was a presidential candidate in Nigeria's 2019 general elections. Thank you very much indeed for coming in. Great to see you again.
Thank you very much.
How is it possible for MultiChoice to be owing $4.4 billion in tax? Are we any clearer about how this came to be?
We're not any clearer because, again, MultiChoice, from what I've seen so far, they've also denied owing any such amount, and they said they've put all the papers out there, and that they've also answered every query, that they have no demand notice as well. You're very interesting. But if we want to backtrack and begin to, there's something called presumptive taxation, where you could walk back and determine what a potential payer is owing. Perhaps that's what FRS did, So if you said 20, I'd probably think they have more than 20 million subscribers in Nigeria alone, because even if you went to some of what we call ghettos here, whatever, the slums and so on,
somebody's either got DSTV or GoTV.
GoTV. Right. So I think they're going to have.
And I think the reason actually GoTV came on is that it's a lot cheaper than the other one.
Exactly. So it has few options, but almost everybody has these things. And then, of course, so the point then becomes, well, how much are they charging? What's their profit margins like? But the communication put forward by FRS is very damning, really, because it says like there's so much befuddlement, so much opacity going on. They haven't actually come forward to say this is the number of subscribers we have. They haven't answered to the letters that they've been written. They haven't opened up their servers. Now, if you want to look at how regulators now operate, of course, everybody's getting smarter. So, for example, the banking regulator, central bank, they have a direct access to the servers of the banks to know what's going on, sometimes in real-time version. So I think that's the same thing that's going on here. So $4 billion is a lot of money. If you say 1.8 trillion, I've never had such an amount of obligation before. And of course, it was been alleged that MultiChoice Africa, which is the parent company, has never paid VAT in Nigeria. Now, I know that the FRS or any IRS anywhere in the world, they don't joke with that VAT, because that's the one that's guaranteed on every transaction. You will take something back. What I'm not clear about is if MultiChoice Africa is also resident in Nigeria as a taxpayer, apart from MultiChoice Nigeria.
Yes, absolutely.
So that's something.
That's a good point, because I mean, you would have thought that the main focus, well, there must be, because I mean they've called for their accounts to be frozen as well.
Yeah.
But the indication, just following up on what you were saying earlier, from the Federal Inland Revenue Service in Abuja, is that they haven't had a chance, basically, to look at MultiChoice's books. I mean, that's really the top line, isn't it? So this appears to be a rough estimate about what they think MultiChoice owes. This may not be the true picture of the outstanding unpaid tax, but more of an estimate based on the fact that they've not been allowed to examine the company's books. Does that sound about right?
That sounds about right, and I'm surprised that MultiChoice itself would preclude the regulator, the taxman, from checking their books. You know, for a company that big with operations out of South Africa. I know a few companies from Nigeria which have gone to establish in South Africa, and the taxman that, you know, come down hard on them. As it is known all over the world, you know, the first deduction from your profit is taxes, not your tithes and offerings. Okay, not the payment that you make to God or to your church or to it's a taxman. So any serious country will not you know, joke with the taxes that they collect, especially from very big established companies that have their finger and their 10 fingers in every home, taken from the pockets of people who have to entertain themselves every day of the week, and so on and so forth. Of course, this also links with some other issue that's coming up now. The attempt by Nigeria, not just Nigeria, but basically Nigeria mentioned that recently that they'd like to also tax some of the big tech companies like Google, like Facebook, and so on. And of course, if you went to Europe, there's what's called a Facebook tax, which France has very much ensured they
absolutely, it's imposed.
And the whole idea is you can't, you're operating out of the US, but you're making your money in other places. I mean, those other places are also entitled to something. You know, the United States is one very strict country, such that even if you were an American citizen making money from anywhere in the world, they tax that money wherever you're making the money. And so every country is getting to that point. And I think now you want to probably ask, you know, what has happened in times past with MultiChoice? If they've never paid taxes and never opened up their books, what about the other regimes in Inland Revenue Service? What are the people who are regulating that sector in the communication sector? What role have they played till date?
And why have they been allowed to, assuming that is the case, because that's purely speculative. But I mean, questions are also being asked, and it's being speculated in the Nigerian and South African press about whether the Nigerian authorities have something against South African-owned companies, because of course there is this rivalry between Nigeria and South Africa to be the continent's leading economy. And just a couple of years ago, I'm sure you're aware of that, MTN, which is a South African telecoms company, had a $2 billion tax bill from the Nigerian authorities, which then subsequently dissipated or disappeared.
Well, I think in the case of MTN, what I think happened then, which the government was talking about some regulatory infractions. They weren't keeping some records of some guys, and they felt that you know, they were allowing their platform to be used by terrorists and so on, and so they moved in. And of course, the tax issue came in. They kind of slammed them. You know, and of course, there was also a scandal out of that. We had some aid of the government had taken 500 billion naira or some sort of money, and so on. And of course, that kind of died. But of course, you know, they had to sit across the table, which is probably what's going to happen now. Nigeria gives 34%, from what I've seen so far, of MultiChoice's business. 34%, followed by Kenya, I think about 10, 11% or thereabouts. So they're getting quite a bit of cash flow from here. So I think that I think there's something that needs to be said. You know, no company should think that Nigeria is a place to come and do business for next to nothing. Of course, you know, we ourselves aren't very used to the tax man. We still have quite a bit of resistance to that. I went to Ghana in 2019, and in a restaurant in Osu in Ghana. By the time we got the bill, I mean, I almost flipped, because I had on the bill 17.5% VAT. I had 2.5% national health insurance. I had 2.5% education tax on a bill in a restaurant. So the Ghanaians don't joke with their taxes, and I think that's where we need to go to. People would always say, yeah, we don't like the way they're spending our money, but hey, I mean, the guys that are in the position of leadership now will go, and other people will come. And if you don't lay the right foundation for people to begin to understand that all those things that we need needs to be funded somehow, and if we are not even sincere enough to compare what's going on in Nigeria with other countries, then we have a problem. Excise duties, for example, is the lowest in Nigeria, perhaps in the world. And there was a time in 2017 under Kemi Adeosun, they wanted to increase excise duty. There was daggers drawn with the Manufacturers Association and so on. And what are these excise duties? Duties on cigarettes, on alcohol, sometimes on water, fizzy drinks and stuff like that. You know, in Ghana, you would see a QR code on every drink that is sold.
But let me ask you this then, because that's a very interesting point you raise. Why is it that Nigeria, when it could be making I mean, it's got 200 million people, in excess of 200 million, it could be making so much money from proper taxation. Why has it allowed the whole taxation regime to lapse over so many years? Because, I mean, you could certainly make the argument that so many people don't pay taxes in Nigeria. And that's why they come down hard on people that they can actually get a hold of.
Absolutely. Exactly. Then that becomes a double kill.
Absolutely.
So you're trying to take so much from the few people that can pay or are willing to pay, and then you're kind of looking away. There are parts of Nigeria where it's seen to be a no, don't even talk about it, you know. However, if you look at even they take it to the religious realm, countries like Saudi Arabia, like UAE, they introduced VAT. I mean, those were tax-free regimes. But in 2017, the UAE introduced the 5% VAT. By 2018, Saudi Arabia did the same. So, but you come to Nigeria and say, well, no, it's haram, and there are some states. And that's why you have a problem with this thing whereby some states are so dependent on the federal allocation, would not tax their people, would not even begin to let them understand that, look, this is the way to fund governance.
Because they've allowed people to get away with it for so long. And it's become politically explosive now. I mean, if you talk about raising taxes, you're not going to get a vote.
However, you won't get the vote. But if you were wise, you'd, if you were transparent, you know, you'll find a way of winning without talking about it. That's in the realm of politics. And when you get in there, you know you have to do what you have to do. You know what I'm saying? So, however, the big issue is also that many of the people who are in leadership positions, they think in the same way in Nigeria.
Right.
They are the kind of people who would rather not pay. I've seen instances where property taxes, which are payable by well-to-do people, are shut down in different state assemblies in this country by people who are very well-to-do. Now, if you don't pay,
that's a very good
small man will not pay.
Let's pick up on that when we come back. Stay with us. You're watching the Arise interview. Plenty more still ahead. Welcome back to the Arise interview. I'm Charles Aniagolu. Now, you might have heard that the tax authorities here in Nigeria have ordered that the bank accounts of MultiChoice Nigeria be frozen. MultiChoice is, of course, a South African pay TV company, and its parent company is MultiChoice Africa. They own outlets such as DSTV, GoTV, and Mnet. But now they are embroiled in a titanic legal tussle with the Nigerian tax authorities, and it's all because they claim MultiChoice owes $4.4 billion in back payment for tax. MultiChoice has denied the charges, insisting that it has complied with Nigerian tax laws. But Nigeria's tax body, known as FIRS, says it has engaged commercial banks to freeze and recover the amount from the bank accounts of MultiChoice Nigeria and MultiChoice Africa. So how has it come to this? And with me in the studio, the Nigerian economist and CEO of Global Analytics Consulting Limited, Tope Fasua, who was a presidential candidate in Nigeria's 2019 general elections. Thank you very much indeed for staying with us. We were talking about this during the break. Is this also about a lack of understanding of the business operating environment in Nigeria, which Nigerians themselves appear to understand, but foreigners may not?
Perhaps the culture, all right. But beyond the business operating environment is perhaps the, would you call it business culture in Nigeria? Well, an average Nigerian businessman expects to see all sorts of tax collectors coming at you, from local government to state and all of that, coming out of the woodwork and so on. Someone coming from abroad may expect to see maybe just one tax office and so on, and fewer harassments. What you probably would find is scenarios where big companies come here, but there are some some expenses they didn't bargain for, informal collections from them, all right? But in terms of, yes, on paper, the business environment is supposed to be okay to come and trade. And I want to say also that many of those guys coming from abroad also are used to very strict tax regimes. And our tax regime isn't as strict anyway. Even the rate of taxation here on company income tax has been reduced from 30% to 25 or thereabout, which is fair. I mean, I operated a company in the UK for about 8 years. I remember that the moment I registered that company in Company House, the first letter I got was from Her Majesty Revenue and Customs, warning me, warning me of tax infractions and saying that if you don't pay, and of course, every year you cannot do anything until you have done your returns with the company house in the UK. And in order to do that, you have to show that you've paid your taxes, to government, and also that you've remitted all the national insurance and payee for your staff. In Nigeria, we see companies deducting payee and not remitting. We see companies deducting a pension even from the staff account and not remitting, and they trade with such money. So I would want to believe that well-established companies are used to very strict tax regime. They shouldn't take anything for granted. But what they may not be used to are all of those stuff like people coming to harass you with mobile policeman in the office.
Yeah, because I was going to say that particular aspect of it. Is there an element of corruption as well? Because, I mean, you may well have people come in and say, okay, we're from, I'm not suggesting that's purely speculative, but I mean, somebody coming in and saying, hey, we're from the tax man, and you're going to pay this, that, or the other thing, but just pay this, and we won't harass you anymore. There's a lot of and then the MultiChoice will assume that they've made an official payment, when in fact it wasn't official.
If they go down that route, well, it's their liability. But whatever it is they pay for a company that big, they've got to have evidence, because there's actually quite a bit. There's quite a bit of that going on. People come in with huge amounts of demand notices, but hey, we'll sort this out for you for a fee. Even the Inland Revenue Service has won quite a number of times because they've also busted a few of their staff doing that. It's good business for those who can. So for those who can.
So really, to most Nigerians, this kind of you and I were talking about this during the break. This kind of public conversation is really about the regulator, the tax authority, asking you to come forward and speak with them and reach a middle ground agreement. Is that the way to understand this kind of headline grabbing figure and public charge against MultiChoice?
50%, half and half. So when I saw that, I said, okay, well, 1.8 maybe they'll come down to 400 billion or 200 billion or something of that sort. But of course, the rhetoric around the communication from Inland Revenue was damning, in terms of the allegations of befuddlement, of almost.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's the bit that appears to be damning.
And I felt that MultiChoice had kind of left it too late, and that shouldn't be something we hear from. And maybe there are some other South African companies that are here that don't have that problem. There are some companies from abroad. We don't have a lot, actually. We don't have a lot of companies investing here, really. But there are some companies. Which
is why it's important to make them feel that the environment isn't hostile.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And again, you mentioned something when we were discussing. In the UK, you would get the reminders, right? You get the reminders every year.
Yeah, absolutely.
You're sure
several times,
you're being surveilled. You're sure, no matter how small. I mean, I was running a company with an asset of maybe £100,000 or something, but I was made to understand that, hey, you don't joke with this stuff.
Absolutely.
And the regulation was strict. Now, there's also a role for regulation. If I use my example, there was a regulator in charge of that sector, which will come. Their role was also to make sure you paid your taxes. So it's not just you're just running all year and then waiting to pay the tax at the end of the year. Your regulator made sure that you did the right. So NCC now is the regulator of MultiChoice. NCC should have a role to ensure MultiChoice does the right thing, including, in fact, especially paying their taxes.
Right. So let's say that it's not a witch hunt against maybe South African companies or whatever, but does it undermine Nigeria's assertion that it is open for business and wants to attract international investment? Because activities like this would seem to contradict that.
Yeah, well, it also then depends on how well Nigerian authority is able to manage the communication. Someone looking at this on the surface be like, wow, I mean, this is preposterous. You know, why would you say a company has not paid taxes from get-go? You know, did they have any waiver? If they didn't have any waiver, why did this happen? How many regimes have been around since then?
Yeah.
You know, mind you, there's also this thing, if you remember Richard Branson coming to Nigeria to do business, and there's this instance where government officials will say, you know what, you don't have to pay that, just put me on the company, you know, and reserve X amount of shares, or I don't know how to do it for me. And of course these things happen. A company as big as this comes to Nigeria, and a few government officials want to get into the action, getting on the action, rather than get them to do the right thing by Nigeria. These are all issues. So again, for the sake of Nigeria, we hope that the government, FRS and NCC and every regulator and all, and including the Vice President's office, PEBEC, you know, this guy is promoting ease of doing business, should be very keen to understand that if this story is going in the wrong way,
absolutely,
and people are getting the wrong message, you need to move against
that. Yes,
that.
because I mean,
and put everything out there.
Absolutely, because if I'm an international company and I don't understand what the local nuances in a country are likely to be, then that could be a major turnoff. I mean, because as we said, I mean, we've seen with, you know, this with MTN as well.
I mean, look, I mean, we have so much baggage in Nigeria, and that's part of why we're here, you know, so much baggage. People don't want to come here because of security issues. They hear all those fantastic stories about corruption. The opportunities are here to develop. I was speaking with someone recently who said, you know, was trying to bring in some foreign guys to come and do stuff in Nigeria. They wouldn't have anything to do with that. You know, they believe that, look, we're making our money anyway, so what's the point? Why would we come to Nigeria?
Absolutely, and go through all the headache.
So again, exactly. So when you have this kind of negative stuff going on, you need to be very careful as a nation to move against it in a very clear manner.
Tope, it's absolutely brilliant chatting with you there. Tope Fasua is the Nigerian economist, CEO of Global Analytics Consulting Limited, and former presidential candidate. Thank you very much indeed.